The bond market is telling a completely different story, by the way, and this is a little more esoteric, but if you look at yield curves, look at the Treasury yield curve, Euro-dollar futures yield curve, German Bunds yield curve, they're all inverted. They're all inverted. Now, inversions happen, just meaning the longer-term rate is lower than the short-term rate. We're seeing something globally we've never seen before, and it is the best single indicator of a recession. The last time we saw anything like this was in 2007, just ahead of the 2008 financial catastrophe. So the stock market's saying it's all good, Goldilocks, soft landing, Fed's going to get the memo, they're going to cut rates, the pivot, and buy stocks. The bond market is saying, no, this is bad, and it's going to get worse, and it's actually too late for the Fed to do anything about it. See, when these inversions start, sometimes they're a year forward, like, hey, look at the Euro-dollar futures yield curve a year from now, man, that thing is inverted. But what happens is, as you get closer to the actual thing you're worried about, the inversion gets nearer and nearer. Now it is literally a month away or less. So that's like a big red siren, a flashing light, whatever you want to call it. Okay, whatever your baseline is, probably treasuries, 2-year notes or 5-year notes or whatever, they will come down a lot. Not right away. We may still be a month or two away on this, but they'll come down a lot. And then corporate yields will go up a lot because of the recession, because of deterioration, increased bankruptcies, reduced revenues, et cetera. So those spreads will blow out. And it's important to remember, interest rates are a lagging indicator. Everyone's like, well, how could interest rates be going up if we're in a recession? The answer is, as you get close to recession, who figures it out first? Well, the Fed figures it out last. They're usually the last to know. Wall Street is second last to know. The people who figure it out first are actual business people, entrepreneurs, restaurant owners, dry cleaners, taxi drivers, or even medium-sized businesses. They see it. If you're in the trucking business, it's real time. If inventories are sky high and new orders are being slashed, you're not moving anything by truck. So there are certain businesses that are concurrent. The yield curves I was talking about are very good forward indicators. They tell you what's going to happen next. A lot of business people are living in the real world in real time. They know what's happening now, and the stock market tends to figure it out later. But as far as banking and credit is concerned, what happens is, if you're a business person and you see business heading down, fewer customers, whatever, you go out and borrow all you can. You're like, hey, there's a really bad recession coming. If I got lines of credit, I'm going to use them up now. I don't want my bank changing the terms. I said, I'm going to borrow everything I can. And that creates a demand for funds, and interest rates go up. And then the recession hits, and the bankers go, what's going on? Credit losses start going up. And then they just turn off the spigots and they raise standards. They stop doing loans. And then interest rates will start to come down. Interest rates peak after the recession has already begun. So interest rates may not have peaked yet. Even the treasury market. So that's not unusual. Now, here's what the Fed is missing, or maybe everybody's missing. When you hear these layoff announcements, people are like, well, if they're laying off, why isn't the unemployment rate going up? Well, the answer is, they have to announce the layoffs. There's all kinds of statute, SEC. So if I'm going to fire 10,000 people, I got to tell the world I'm firing 10,000 people. It doesn't mean I fire them that day. I might fire them on a rolling basis over the next 30 days. And it doesn't mean they walk out the door empty-handed and head for the unemployment office. I might give them 3 months severance, 6 months severance, et cetera. And so when do they actually show up to the unemployment office and say, give me a check? It might not be till this spring. So the layoff announcements are out there, but the unemployment rate hasn't budged, because there is a lag, 3 months. But that's why I said interest rates lag the business cycle, and they do. Unemployment lags the business cycle. Unemployment is a lagging indicator. When you're an employer, entrepreneur, and you're in any kind of distress, not as many customers walking in the door, you'll do everything you can to avoid laying people off. You'll, be late on the rent. You'll turn down the lights, find a cheaper laundry, whatever it takes. By the time you get around to firing people, you run out of options. Like, I've done everything I can. Now my business is in jeopardy. I have to fire some people. And then combine that with what I just said about severance and, rolling terminations, et cetera. It's a lagging indicator. But we know enough right now to know that number's going up. But that's not inconsistent with the fact that we're already in a recession. It's exactly what you would expect, that unemployment's a lagging indicator. So when the Fed's on a mission, they actually don't care about the stock market. Here's what they do care about. They care about disorderly markets. And that's the key word. It's not, if stocks are going down, but it's, kind of a little, 0.5% a day, 1% a day, trending down, lower highs, lower lows, trending down. The Fed doesn't care about that. They're not going to bail out the stock market. They do care if it's disorderly. When was it disorderly? Well, March 2020, at the worst part of the pandemic, it dropped like 30% in like 2 or 3 weeks. The fall of 2008, it was like somebody opened a trap door. The Fed does care about that because that kind of disorderly behavior can feed on itself and end up in a 1929 type scenario. So the Fed will get the memo, as I put it, stop raising rates and begin cuts when the markets are disorderly. That may happen. In fact, I expect it will, but we're not there yet. So there may be a pivot, in late August, or July thereabouts, but not because of Goldilocks, but because it's not a soft landing, it's a crash landing. So the global economy is in bad shape. It's going into a recession. Now, a lot of people have said that, we're going to have a recession as if it's no big deal, but they're expecting a mild recession. And I see a much more severe recession. Now, the other half, what does this mean for financial markets? And there, the best way I've been able to explain it, imagine you're in an Irish pub and you got 3 Irish storytellers. And I'm part Irish, so I can talk about the Irish, but they're telling 3 different stories, and you got to listen to each one. So there's the Fed story, the market story, and then there's something called reality, what's actually happening. So stock market's telling us Goldilocks, bond market's telling us, here comes, Hurricane Mitch or whatever. And then there's what I call the reality, and I guess I'm the storyteller here, but what I see is a kind of a hybrid. The Fed's doing what they're doing, right or wrong. Okay, they're doing what they're doing. The market has their own interpretation. I agree with the market, certainly the bond market, that the Fed has probably over-tightened, and they may pivot to say that there could be a rate cut in August. Maybe, I wouldn't rule that out, but for a really bad reason. In other words, if the Fed cuts rates, which they may, the pivot may be real. It's not because they engineered a soft landing and Goldilocks and everything. Oh, that's just right. It's because they screwed up as usual, as they've been doing since 1913. They over-tightened and they found out too late. And then they have to slam on the brakes or take the foot off the brake, if you will, in terms of rate hikes. And then pivot. And we've seen this movie before. This is exactly what happened in 2018. The stock market dropped 20%. It was like 19.9 or something on the Dow, so maybe not technically a bear market, but yeah, what's the difference? It dropped 20%. The Fed was tightening into that collapse. The Fed tightened on December 16th, 2018, only like 8 days before the Christmas Eve massacre, and after most of the 20% collapse had already happened, they tightened one last time. So what it shows you is that when the Fed's on a mission, they actually don't care about the stock market, this whole, Bernanke put and Greenspan put and all that. That's not how it works.